The year is 1492, but Christopher Columbus never sets sail. Instead, a fleet of massive Chinese treasure ships drops anchor off the coast of Portugal. The sailors who step onto European soil are not explorers seeking spices. They are emissaries of the Dragon Throne, and they have come to claim what they believe is rightfully theirs. The flags that rise over Lisbon are not Spanish or Portuguese. They are silk banners embroidered with golden dragons. What if China colonized Europe? What if the greatest empire on earth had turned west instead of inward? What if the roles of history were reversed and the East became the master of the West? In our world, China was the most advanced civilization on the planet during the 15th century. Their ships were the largest ever built. Their navigators had crossed the Indian Ocean and reached the shores of Africa decades before Europeans even dreamed of sailing beyond their own coastlines. Admiral Zheng had commanded fleets so vast they made European vessels look like toys. His treasure ships were over 400 feet long, with 9 masts and crews of thousands. They carried porcelain, silk and gunpowder weapons that no European army could match. But then, in 1433, something changed. The Chinese emperor ordered the fleets destroyed. The treasure voyages ended. China turned inward, closed its borders, and let the world forget its power. Europe, meanwhile, stumbled into an age of exploration that would change everything. But what if that decision had been different? What if the Dragon Throne had chosen expansion over isolation? Imagine the court of the Forbidden City in 1430. The emperor sits on his throne, surrounded by advisors. They are debating the future of the treasure fleets. Some say the voyages are too expensive. Others say they bring glory to China and spread its influence across the world. In our timeline, the isolationist won, but in this timeline, a different voice speaks up. A young admiral inspired by Zheng Hu's legacy presents a map. It shows not just Africa and India, but lands beyond. Lands to the far west, across an ocean no Chinese ship has ever crossed. He speaks of rumors. Stories from Arab traders about pale-skinned people living in cold, fragmented kingdoms. People who fight endless wars over tiny plots of land. People who have no gunpowder, no printing press, no centralized government. The emperor leans forward. He asks a single question. Could these lands be conquered? The admiral nods, and with that nod, history splits in two. The first fleet sails in 1434. It is not a voyage of exploration, it is a mission of dominance. 100 ships, 30,000 soldiers, cannons, crossbows and fire lances. They sail west, beyond India, beyond Arabia, into waters no Chinese sailor has ever seen. Months pass. The crew begins to doubt. Then one morning a lookout shouts, "Land." The ships approach a coastline of green hills and stone castles. It is Portugal. The fleet anchors in the harbour of Lisbon. The Portuguese king watches from his palace, unsure whether to feel awe or terror. The Chinese emissaries come ashore. They present gifts: silk, jade, porcelain cups so thin you can see light through them. They speak through translators, and their message is clear. The Dragon Throne has arrived. You will submit, or you will burn. The Portuguese king has no choice. His army is small. His weapons are crude. The Chinese have cannons that can level castle walls. He signs a treaty. Portugal becomes a tributary state of China. The dragon flag flies over Lisbon. Within a year, Spanish kingdoms fall next. Then France. Then the Italian city-states. Europe, fragmented and weak, cannot resist. The Chinese do not conquer with cruelty. They conquer with efficiency. They offer a deal. Submit to the emperor, pay tribute, and you will be protected. Resist, and you will be erased. Most choose submission. Those who resist learn quickly that Chinese gunpowder is not a myth. By 1450, most of Western Europe is under Chinese control. But this is not a violent occupation. It is something stranger. Something no European could have imagined. The Chinese do not want to destroy European culture. They want to reshape it. Confucian scholars arrive in Paris and Rome. They open schools. They teach European children to read Chinese characters. They introduce the civil service examination system. In China, anyone can rise to power through merit, not birth. In Europe, this idea is revolutionary. Peasant children who pass the exams become governors. Nobles who fail them lose their titles. The old feudal order begins to crumble. Trade transforms overnight. Chinese merchants bring porcelain, tea and gunpowder to European markets. They build roads, canals and postal systems. The printing press, invented in China centuries earlier, spreads across the continent. Books are no longer rare treasures. They are everywhere. Knowledge flows like water. European artisans learn Chinese techniques. They begin to produce their own silk, their own porcelain, but it is always second to the original. The superiority of Chinese craftsmanship is undeniable. Religion becomes a battlefield. The Chinese tolerate Christianity, but they do not respect it. Confucian scholars debate with Catholic priests in public forums. They ask uncomfortable questions. Why does your God allow suffering? Why do your kings claim divine right when they are clearly incompetent? Why do you burn books and kill heretics instead of seeking wisdom? Many Europeans begin to question their faith. Some convert to Buddhism or Taoism. Others create strange hybrid religions, blending Jesus with Confucian philosophy. The Pope, confined to a small territory in central Italy, watches his influence fade. The Catholic Church, once the most powerful institution in Europe, becomes a shadow of itself. Daily life in this new Europe is unrecognizable. In the cities, Chinese architecture rises. Pagodas appear alongside Gothic cathedrals. Markets sell rice and noodles instead of bread and cheese. European nobles wear silk robes and learn to drink tea. The Chinese introduce new crops. Rice paddies spread across southern France. Soy and millet grow in German fields. Famine, once a constant threat, becomes rare. The population grows, but so does resentment. Many Europeans feel like strangers in their own land. They whisper in secret. They remember the old ways. They dream of rebellion. The Renaissance never happens. Not the way it did in our world. There is no explosion of European art and science because European culture is being absorbed into something larger. Leonardo da Vinci grows up in a world where Chinese technology is already superior. He does not invent flying machines or study anatomy in secret. Instead, he becomes a student of Chinese engineering. He learns to build bridges and aqueducts using techniques perfected in the Song Dynasty. Michelangelo does not paint the Sistine Chapel. He carves statues for a Confucian temple in Florence. The European spirit of individualism, of rebellion against authority, is smothered before it can ignite. But something unexpected begins to grow. In the shadow of Chinese rule, a new kind of identity emerges. Europeans start to see themselves not as French or Spanish or Italian, but as something united. They are the conquered, the occupied, the people living under the dragon's shadow. And shared oppression creates a bond stronger than any king or pope ever could. Secret societies form. They meet in basements and forests. They preserve the old languages, the old stories, the old songs. They wait for a moment of weakness, a chance to rise. That moment comes in 1520. A plague sweeps through China. It is devastating. Millions die. The emperor loses control. The treasure fleets stop coming. The governors in Europe are left isolated, cut off from reinforcements. The rebellions begin small. A village refuses to pay tribute. A garrison is ambushed. Then the fires start. In Paris, in Madrid, in Vienna, the dragon flags burn. European forces, trained and equipped by the Chinese, turn their weapons against their masters. The wars are brutal. The Chinese governors fight desperately, but they are outnumbered and surrounded. One by one, the Chinese territories in Europe fall. By 1530, the last Chinese garrison is driven from the continent. Europe is free. But it is not the same Europe that existed before. The Europeans who emerge from a century of Chinese rule are transformed. They have learned organization. They have learned discipline. They have learned to see themselves as equals to the great empires of the East. They have gunpowder. They have printing presses. They have a hunger to prove themselves. And they have something else. Resentment. A burning desire to never be conquered again. Within decades, European kingdoms begin their own age of exploration, but they are not seeking trade or knowledge. They are seeking revenge. They sail east. They colonize. They conquer. and the cycle of empire begins again. The irony is almost unbearable. In our world, Europe colonized much of the globe and justified it with ideas of superiority and civilization. In this world, Europe does the same thing, but with a different wound driving them. They were once the conquered, and they swore never to be weak again. The colonies they establish in Asia and Africa are even harsher than in our timeline, because they are born from humiliation, not curiosity. The world becomes a darker place. The balance of power shifts endlessly, but the suffering remains constant. What if China had colonized Europe? Would it have brought enlightenment or oppression? Would it have united the continent or destroyed its soul? The answer is both. History is not a story of heroes and villains. It is a story of choices, and every choice carries consequences no one can predict. The Chinese sought to spread order and wisdom, but they planted the seeds of future conflict. The Europeans sought freedom, but they became the very thing they once resisted. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: power, no matter where it comes from, no matter how noble its intentions, always creates its opposite, and the wheel of history turns forever and without mercy.